Good morning, good morning, good morning. I've had a couple of days floating around, still trying to really pinpoint what the best thing to do is. Weirdly, I found on my laptop a video of me talking to camera like 6 years ago. And it kind of shocked me. I was like, wow, I remember doing it. The main things that shocked me is one, how much more nervous I was. Like my voice sounded different. There was just a lot of I was proud of that person. I was like, wow, that's, I remember that being a big deal. I remember that being a huge, just like a huge mountain to climb was doing that. I'd done other little things, and this was just like me talking to camera. And I went on about, there's a few subjects I went on about how music, I think, was being overproduced and overpolished, how I was going to strive to do that, and I have continued on that. I was kind of like, because it doesn't seem completely like one straight line. It's like it comes and goes, and to something about seeing that and going, well, you've stayed to what you were going to do. That's pretty cool. I spoke about a business that at that time I was about to attempt, and that business, I dropped that business because of just a weird, it was weird. I kind of abandoned it. It was like a weird, which happens, that happens a lot. But to hear it was like a window back, and it was all positive. I mean, a lot of the things, the overwhelming thing, I was very proud of that young gentleman, and I know that he had certain issues going on. This is the interesting thing about this type of what I'm doing here, and what I think a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of this I present outwardly because there are major things in the world that are happening. There were then, but they weren't as major then. Or they were as major, but they weren't as direct and immediate in front of me. And that had been from a long time. I'd been in that. So I was into sustainable development, all these things. I knew roughly I'd already been fucked over by the economic kind of world once already. And so I talk about that a little bit, and I say how I have this kind of mature, patient version of business is what I'm like. This is 6 years ago, and this is before the pandemic. This is before I was still with my children's mother. And it was just, I will probably share it because I don't think I ever did. And so I think it's just, that's it. It's it'll come in right at a good point. I'll be like, hey, this is this. I have a continuity in my direction that is undeniable because I am doing this the whole time. I also have a continuity within my own personal narrative because I'm doing this all the time. A lot of it is not able to be easily consumed by it's not like I'm writing an autobiography. A lot of it is like, I might have put a song somewhere and a timestamp there and a little comment there. So it is my diary, and a lot of it is written in in a language that really only I can understand. But it is there. And this is where I think I come in with authority, because I've been doing that in this environment and I'm seeing it change. If your interaction with this environment is, is consumatory, if you mainly just consume, you are consuming it's almost like, and this is a metaphor that sprung to mind instantly, imagine a flood, a really slow flood. So in the whole scheme of things, this flood is going to take 10 years and it will consume everything you have. It will destroy, you will be killed by this flood. But the flood is really, really, really slow. So, and then picture the thing of like we don't have water in the tap, you have to go to the river and get water. There is a whole lot of time before the ultimate destruction where you are kind of like, oh, well, the river's closer. I don't have to walk as far to get my water. You know what I mean? And it's not going to be until it's right on your fucking doorstep that you start going, well, this convenience about me being able to get the water is starting to worry me, because what if it doesn't stop? This is the point I'm making. And my content online is the story of that. It's the story of the river rising constantly. And it is worrying in a way, because I know that most people, out of 100 people, 90 of those people will have never really ever produced anything for digital consumption. They have merely just consumed it. And that consumption is directed by the demand of the consumers. And consumers do not know what they need. And that has been a balance between media companies and consumers for a long time, but it was a way the allocation numbers were way different. So it was a very small, very professional unit with a couple of channels producing something that would or wouldn't be accepted and consumed by a large population. And so that that dance would be, there'd be a high importance to that, because it had, like, if you go and spend $100,000-$200,000 on making a TV show and it doesn't work, it's like money's lost. And then someone gets the brunt of that. They're like, well, you made a bad decision. Or there'd be somewhere in there be like, well, what should we be telling people? Should we be instructing them to do this? And what has happened is that the capability to produce something has become nil for almost everyone, if they have that inclination. And something has gone on there where the standard of programming in that, what used to be, like, I'm sure there was also like always a lot of kind of persuasive programming that was leading us to perhaps things that aren't great. But something's flipped now where it's like that controlled system is now coming into conflict with the uncontrolled side, which I am a member of, a very small member of. Like, so extremely small that I've had kind of weirdly, counterintuitively, I've had the absolute freedom to be able to actually witness and then expose this phenomenon, because I'm not concerned with consumability at all. That was always, and that's what I said in the video 6 years ago, was like, this isn't, I spoke about how when I was learning guitar, I was like, I'm not going to put pressure on myself to do anything. I'm just going to evolve and learn, and it's a never-ending trail. And it's the same methodology that I'm doing here. And that methodology is what is bringing me into direct observation of this phenomenon. And you all, just purely by not doing that, do not see it. There is a really strong instinct in humans to just accept what's being laid out in front of them. Now the problem is that what's being laid out is getting controlled, but it's getting controlled in a situation where it's losing ground, so it is combative. And I think that threat to that system is creating a tension which is skewing everything. And so we're not in a state where we're making good decisions about the direction of humanity, or about the things that we should be consuming, and then go through that. That is like the ladder, the lattice, the framework that politics sits on. They sit on that ocean of controlled content. And so it's like, it'd be like training, you can imagine like a flock of sheep, and you train them to just eat carrots. And like, this is weird, I'm making this up as I go along, but you can almost imagine that. So you don't need sheepdogs, because you end up training them just with carrots. So they do whatever they are told, like just with carrots. And then like, imagine that just goes way out of whack, and these sheep get such a strong urge for carrots that they use that drive for carrots to start, like, instead of following the farmer into the pens that he needs them and into the paddocks they need them, they start jumping the fences and going raiding the surrounding carrot fields in a ravenous, like, expansion, out of control expansion, to just devour anything carrot-like. This is what I see happening. The tools, see, there wasn't an acceptable, when I was a child, even things like mild sex scenes on mass programming, there was an open dialogue about this. I remember like the C word, saying the C, like, I won't say it, even though I say it all the time, was like it was a big deal. I can't remember where it was. It was somewhere said it. But I remember it being spoken about, going, oh my God, did you hear they said that on this show? And see, the difference is, and you may be like, well, I've heard you say that. You say that all the time. It's like, yeah, I'm just talking. I'm not creating curated content. So being an Australian who's speaking about something passionately, I'm not really alone in someone that might use that word. So mine is an authenticity and a freedom, because I'm just speaking authentically like from unrestricted. I'm speaking in an unrestricted way because I'm delving into things that require that. And that is the respect I'm giving my potential audience, is I'm like, I'm not going to program out my content based on anything other than the direct interaction between my brain and the environment I'm seeing, which is, that's what everyone kind of expects from everyone. Yeah, sometimes you limit. I do limit my language. If I went to a retirement village, I'm not going to be swearing. Like, that's normal, but I just do act authentically, and I'm also try to not overdo it. And then you can kind of go, well, he said that 3 times in the last 10 minutes. It goes, it's like a tool for going. It's like volume. You know what I mean? Like, if I start talking really loud, you can tell there's something there. And if I start saying more and more swear words, you can tell that there's some real passion behind what I'm saying, either positively or negatively. But I think we had, in the world, we had an appropriate mix of, as a human being going through the world, you would have an appropriate mix of, you would consume programming that you knew was curated for mass consumption, and that was okay. And then almost when you were with people you knew, or you were in a comfortable situation, you would then, did you see that like that? Oh my God, they fucking said this. Like the oh my God, did you fucking hear they said cunt on the Wiggles last night, or fucking on Neighbours? I can't fucking believe they said cunt. Those cunts, they're fucking risky cunts. Like, that would be back here. That would be the mass, the water cooler talk, if you want to go there. But one of the ways would be on the phone. You might phone your friend and have a chat with them, and that might come up, and there'll be swearing. No one was censoring themselves on the phone throughout the majority of my life. But where people are censoring themselves, and not censoring isn't enough. It's like they are definitely censoring themselves. They are definitely censoring their messaging. Definitely. This is like 100%. But what's even worse is they are taking it on themselves to curate in alignment with the programming that is getting more and more and more and more combative. It's because it has lost its position on the top of the pile, which was put there just because that was like an agreed upon plate, because the technology was so expensive, the distribution was expensive, it needed that structure to be even able to exist. There wasn't anyone really, there was someone maybe spurting out some radio show somewhere, and people would consume it, but it wasn't this big thing that was pumped out massively. Whereas now everyone has that same potential from the get-go. I immediately am producing for mass consumption. And so the mass consumption aspect has to do with promotion. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't how those, say the BBC or the ABC or all the commercial stations or the commercial radio stations or the newspapers of the past, they were all formed by the collection of money, and then they danced into our lives in a very, hey, is this okay? Is this okay? Can we do this? We want to do this. We're providing entertainment. We're here, da 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 da. And then because of that power, there was then easily distinguishable conversations were had about, well, hey, with great power comes great responsibility. We can't just perform to the lowest common denominator. Why don't we? Let's push into that. Let's push educational content into that. Let's push something that makes people think. Let's try and break stereotypes or social things. And that was like a lot of the media I consumed growing up had that intention. Now it almost seems like a lot of the low-hanging fruit to do with that social engineering getting rid of discrimination and getting homophobia is almost unheard of in my age group. Yet it's being discussed as if it's not. And I'm not saying it's completely gone, the same as people hating white people isn't gone. It never has been. People hating English people isn't gone. It never has been. It's always there. And that's almost where we're at, where we're trying to... People have mistaken that it's about, that's the cause. So we need to just keep digging and finding more inequality to explore, not realizing that, no, that was a responsibility taken on by those networks to try and solve the low-hanging fruit. As we get deeper in, and this is what this trans thing is, we're creating, because all those problems were created, say the homophobia problem was created by a population of people that felt threatened by homosexuality. Do you get it? So it's that's how homosexuality, because there are basic structural things to do with homosexuality. If you're a homosexual in the past, I'm not talking about the last 30 years, but in the past, you live in a world where the priorities that the majority of the world was living on don't apply to you. And so that can cause trouble because you might not be as family oriented. Which means you might not respect family spaces or the idea of a family. And you can see how that would be threatening to people that were trying to do a family. And then there are, this is an effect in society, which the homophobia wasn't developed out of some pure hatred for gay people. There would have been a trigger there, probably because, take pirates. There's been different aggressors in history that had a large portion of homosexual people in it, because you can kind of see. If I go, my interaction with women, I'm constantly in this spiral of being henpecked to death. Whereas if I go the other way and I'm hey boys, let's go train to be warriors, and then, look after each other as well, you can, and who cares about children, because we don't care about children, we're just that. You can see how that could end up bad. So you can see what initiated, maybe it got out of hand, maybe it got too much, and people were dispossessed by that to a point that became too much. But if you apply the whole history, you could go our cities and towns got raided for 300 years by homosexual pirates, and all our ships got stung by homosexual pirates. They pushed us back to a thing where we responded, pushed them back to a point where then they were you get the classic kind of, don't hurt me, I'm just this. That's a pushback. But now where we're going, and so we balanced out, and it's okay, we can all be fine, let's all be fine. And then it immediately comes back with this trans ideology, which is an immediate re-escalation. It's just that we don't get taught history enough to realize what was the initial pressure that created the homophobia in the first place. And say it was the church. You can't just go, it was the church. It's okay, why did the church do that? Well, it was in competition with the church. It's okay, why was it in competition with the church? Well, because all of these things are far larger. We don't have dead ends. There aren't, and this is what, it's almost there is hatred, there is bigotry, there is this. All these words, these simple explaining words, the creator. It's that's not how the world works. It's a lot of energy. There's a lot of controlled, and some of it is just a fear of something different, but a lot of it also isn't just that. It's not just these simple things. There are cause and effect relationships spiraling throughout history, which are creating these mechanisms for discrimination. I've just been a part of one, because I've been pushed out for that same exact thing. And for the first time, like, it's from me not doing something. And that probably exists as well. That would have been like, so to be, what you don't understand is my call, this is the kind of head fuck. So think about this. Most people who are ultimately pro-vaccine, I guarantee you, they probably have quite an atheistic mindset. And so, but what you don't realize is you have invoked the same condition that an atheist person would have been presented with, say 200 years ago. You've now created that in your thing, which blows your story to pieces, because the pressure that invoked your militant nature of your atheism was because you were dispossessed by the religious majority. And then you have come down to here, and then you have now just done the same in reverse. But it's not like I wasn't a priest or a high person in anything. I was on the fence of atheism myself. But just that's my particular bridge I wasn't going to cross. But it doesn't matter. So you're not taking out, say you have this deep-seated atheistic thing, you're not going and attacking the heads of those institutions. You've just weaseled out some side offshoot, created a new thing that's your line in the sand, and because you were riding the momentum of a huge group of people doing that, and then you've just dispossessed an entire newly created portion of society, putting us in the exact same position that you were put in. A lot of these things, they're just a human nature trope. They're just something that humans do. But instead of digging in and going, hey, this seems to be a common pattern, it's just, we're going along with the next one. We never go back and do the work that's required to undo the triggers. And what I see, so what I've kind of described, hopefully, if you can dig through that pile of words just flying at you, was I've mapped out the mechanism of broadcasting, where broadcasting had a responsibility because of its concentrated nature, purely out of requirement. That was a requirement because you couldn't keep that machine going without lots of resources. So advertising into media was a necessity. Do you see what I'm talking about? It's a lot of the time I'll make these kind of mock promotional things, which I think is just funny, because what I'm trying to do is I'm mocking that system of promotion. As soon as the promotion gets over the top of the content, it's controlled. And that's what we've been in. It's very easy to see. That's how it's the most easy example to see that there's ever been. And once it's actually fully digested by enough people, it'll be the most shocking, because we weren't talking about soap. People didn't get a skin rash, or their clothes didn't quite get clean. We're talking about a mass injection of a experimental substance, just completely steamrolled into our subconscious and into our conscious, which created an ideological civil war everywhere on Earth at the same time, down an avenue that no one had thought about before. I'd had 3 children that had all had vaccinations. I'd had all these things. I'd never had an argument down that line ever before in my life. And yet I'm still, 2 years after the fact, I've been pushed out of society. I'm still here talking about it. When do you wake up? When do you go, whoa, maybe I was subject to some type of mind control? And not down some conspiratorial rabbit hole of mind control. It's just this is just unintended mind control. Unintended like simplistic thinking, like, hey, we've got some vaccines to sell, we can make a lot of money here, we're going to be, even a lot of it would have been like, you can see how the pharmaceutical companies would have been like, if we can do this, if we can concrete our name into the people's subconsciouses at this moment with our cutting edge experimental drug, which is going to forge the future of drugs, which is what they were thinking about. These people are, that is a 50-50 stab in the dark when you get down to it. But it's not like building, I'm going to build a telephone or something like that. But that's how they treated it. You know what I mean? You can see that like the telephones may have had all these like social effects. The telephone could have ended very badly, but it wasn't, we weren't dealing, so we were dealing with something social, but not physical. Not like physical interrupting a system that we don't understand. We don't understand these things at all. I think that should be the oath that every physician, every doctor goes. It goes, look, my job is to assume a position that I know things about this. But, hand on my heart, swear to fucking whoever, I do not. I barely know anything, and we do not openly understand this. So I need to be open to the possibility always that I will be catastrophically wrong about this incredibly complex thing that I don't understand. That's not what's happening. These people are positioning themselves as absolute experts on the human body. Even the lowest form of them, even a GP. A GP didn't dare cow down or even like stand at equal grounds to anyone else during this period because they have been sold the lie that they are experts on the human body, and they're just not. They're not. I'm a musician. I can play guitar, I can play piano, I can sing like notes, I have probably like something very close to perfect pitch, all these things. I am in no way an expert in music, and never will be. Never. I am scratching the surface of a sphere of music that is uncalculable. And that is what the human body is like. And this is not the perception, this is not where most physicians in this current climate are standing. And you can see that this mechanism is what has got everyone into trouble. It wasn't, if we get now a lot of priests and things now, a lot of people of the church, especially not a certain church, certain offshoots of churches and different things, that is the humility that they will assume. They'll be like, okay, yeah, I'm just here. I'm just like, this is uncalculable, and I'm just on the edge, like trying to exude some type of insight to then, and then making it consumable. I don't know that. Whereas in the past, when the large churches were ultimately in charge of our lives, of our day-to-day lives, they were exhibiting this same, we are the voice of God, we are the thing, we are all knowing, we are the direct. That's where the trouble came from. And this is where physicians and doctors and scientists are coming in. You don't know. You don't know. You know some things. You know some very small things, perhaps, that every single aspect of those things you potentially know can all be proven wrong, like that, by one addition of information. And this isn't where, it's something you do with, say you were navigating. You have to be aware of where you are. You have to do it, but you have to know. The most important thing about navigating is you have to be able to know when you're wrong. That is life or death. You have to be able to determine if your instruments are saying this, your maps are saying this, your timeline is saying this, your log is saying this, every point is saying this, but one major thing is wrong, then you have to accept the possibility that everything is wrong. And this is what I'm afraid to every core of my body that we are doing. We are on a ship of society and of humanity that is navigating our own demise. And we've stopped relying on the external cues to our environment that will trigger us to realize that we are way off course. And we are only reliant on our own systems that we have created. And this is the most dangerous thing. If I could distill down every single piece of content I've made for the last 10 years, that is the core problem. We are existing in a bubble of devices, of methodology, of ideology, of perception, of interaction, of whatever, to just keep this thing going, this bubble going, which has lost its purpose. And it's lost its ability to be able to navigate and be aware that it's off track. It's way, way, way off track. When we are now designing, dig into what's happening in the world. We're designing the apocalypse. We're not going into the apocalypse. We're designing the apocalypse, thinking that it's our salvation. It is a suicide mission being led by people, because this is the bigger the risk. And this is where, like, I know where I'm sitting. I know the thing I'm positioning, the Scale Matters project, which is just a bigger screen. Is that level of technology is the same as the telephone. People talked for thousands of years. So people being able to talk, like, in real time through a wire, you know, it may have had some things, but it's like, well, we've been doing this, I think this is fine. That is what I'm trying to bring back. That's why I'm doing this. I'm talking. I could go and knock on everyone's door and try and have a talk with them like the Mormons do, or like whatever does. But I feel like it's better to just keep putting money in this bank, keep talking daily to this space, keep saying, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. Consistent message. This is what's happening. This is where you're going. This is where I'm staying. Until it becomes so obvious where I can go, right, we'll see how I've stayed here on this track, on this consistent track. I have a line of string tied to the trees and I can get back home. You have just all wandered off in different directions and are trying to text message each other on where you are. And you can see, if you've ever got, I'm going to be super sexist now, if you've ever got directions via a text message from a woman, you'll understand where we are. I remember once, there was like literally, I was at the Sky Show, which is an Australia Day fireworks thing. And I remember hearing this girl on the phone trying to explain to where she was. And I think she literally said, like, I'm directly under the sun right now. And there was something else, it was like a flagpole. It's like, I can see this flagpole. That's actually better. That kind of, you know, that gives you a radius basically, but that radius is just huge. It's like this. I do notice a lack of good navigation skills, and it's because they weren't doing the navigating. They just weren't. They haven't been, like, it's not sexist. I wasn't doing the breastfeeding, and this is why, like, do you ever wonder why these gender things are coming in? It's to make, that's the bubble. It's like, no, there couldn't be. Men aren't perceiving things that women can't perceive. There is no such thing as gender. That keeps us in the bubble. Let's just keep going. It'll be right. It's like faith. It's faith in. It's faith in humanity. And think about that. That's quite a common phrase. I'm losing faith in humanity. I've never had faith in humanity. I have faith in humans on an individual basis, I do not have faith in humanity, and I especially don't have faith in humanity when humanity is on an experiment to claim ownership of its direction purely. Because when I look around, I go, it looks like, if I look at the last 1,000 years of history, there is one unified presence that seems to, and if I assume stability as the anomaly, like stability is the anomaly, really. And this is what a lot of people nowadays, they assume stability as the guarantee, as the absolute. Stability is the absolute. No, stability is not the absolute. Stability is the absolute exception to the rule. It's like it should not exist, yet it does. And if I look and I dig into all those societies, especially my direct historical line of societies, I find one thing in common. And it is a dedication to something larger than humanity. And that's also had its own set of issues. But that's what I believe has created the absolutely unlikely stability that we've seen for a long period of time. So we're now trying to make an experiment into our own autonomy, and it is not working. Trust the science created more problems than the church did in the last 400 years, in 3 years. And that's just their first go at it. Because when we think of the idea of God, I'll use pizza. Pizza's a fucking great. Honestly, the amount of times pizza can be used as a metaphor. It's the greatest thing. As soon as you can understand why a round pizza comes in a square box and is served as a triangle, you can understand women. I think or you can understand the world. Now let's go another dimension. Let's think of the classic Australian everything on the fucking plate pizza, the works pizza, which is, it's my favourite. I'm Australian. I'm not a purist. I don't need to have a margarita pizza served by an Italian with spring water in the dough. Like, I get that. I would like to try that at some point, but from my background, it's the pizza you get from a deli that has everything. I had one yesterday. It was fucking beautiful. It's just like, it just is the thing. It's like whatever, throw everything in it. So that's a pizza to me, is that when someone says a pizza, that's what I see, which will be very different to someone in Italy or in New York or wherever. But from Australia, from Western Australia where I grew up, a pizza is an everything, gotta have anchovies, everything pizza, served to you usually from a deli or sometimes from a pizza shop. Now, so that is a concept. I'm saying one word, pizza, in this region, that's what it invokes to me. That there's a lot of ingredients, there's a lot of things going on, especially in this example. So what religion is the word pizza. Religion is like, right, let's get to a point where we can encompass the whole thing under one umbrella. And the whole thing of it is a lot of times it creates more questions than it gives you answers, but it gives you a concept that, so I can go, let's get a pizza. If I'm with a group of people and we all know, I know that they all think of a pizza like that, and that's even gotten a bit worse. That's a different subject, but I go, do you guys want a pizza? We're close enough to go, yeah, I want pizza. They might have their special version of pizza that they want, but we're close enough to get to the concept that we're going to eat pizza. Whereas if I go, hey, should we get some type of thing with tomato sauce and cheese and ham and onion and capsicum, like maybe some arrangement of this, like, or hey, like, actually more science is like, do you think the circumference of the pepperoni is important to this dish do you get what I mean? Like that, if you focus in on one of those ingredients, you're not talking about pizza anymore. And so the idea of pizza doesn't get in the way of that. You can still do that. You can imagine you go, hey, do we want to have pizza? Yes. And then one of the super people who really enjoys diving in on a particular thing, they're like, the circumference of this pepperoni and the fat distribution and the thing, this tells me that this is probably from this location, from Dorsogne here, and this has been passed down for 600 years where they've developed the art of charcuterie and and the incorporation of this piece of charcuterie onto this pizza has made all the difference. That's science. Science exists under an idea of religion, and the idea of religion is the pizza. But you can see we're not going to get fucking anywhere if we stop having concepts that are overarching concepts. And that's what I look at. If I look at the history of my family's history, I see a building in the thing that people have made a concentrated effort to maintain. When I see the constitution of this country, I see that has used there. When I see the constitution of the United States, I see the same thing. It is always under God. So what has been attempted here is globally is an atheistic coup. And the reason I'm taking the opportunity to make this battle is because, hey, I've danced the dance between atheism and religion with the majority. So if I take my adult life, the majority of my adult life was spent in a more atheist direction. The problem is that I've kept finding God. And when I'm really down to it, it's like we should do let's do Alone, Naked and Alone with just atheists. And you'll see that will chew you up. It will chew you up. If you're really up against it and you've only got the fact that you can look at a piece of pepperoni under a microscope, you're going to fucking lose your mind if you're ever up against it. Religion in our lifestyle is because Western civilization is running an experiment to whether we can concentrate humanity, and where the point is that we can do that stably. That's what Western civilization is. That's what civilization is. It's an experiment, and it fails a lot. And so that's why it's a concentration of what is held in every person's core. Aboriginal culture, there is a lot of nomadicism, and there are subshoots so there are nomadic tribes, and then there are subshoots of nomadic individuals. So you can think as a man, every man because all human beings are so much the same that it's not even funny. Every man has the potential to invoke complete nomadicism, solitary lifestyle. And what I'm saying is the idea, and this is why, if you look at the Bible is a series of stories about a single individual coming back and explaining his experiences as a solo nomadic individual. Hence the fact they're always carrying a staff, because that's a thing you quickly realize. If I walk off into the bush, the one thing I want is a big stick. It's not a symbolism to do like with anything else. It's just purely what's required. A human adult male invoking a nomadic solitary existence will very quickly find a stick to defend himself with, to support himself with, to ground himself to the earth. And there's a lot of talk about this being like a wand or like magic or like invoking, or this is his so he can earth himself to the ground. All of that's true, but I think it's also it's a lot less esoteric. Like, although it can be like, it's like you can go see a play that's shit. We can go see a play where you're thrust off into some fantasy thing, and that depends on the presentation, whether it's good or average. That's the same when you think of a stick. It's like, it literally does just give you something to do. It does give you stability in the ground. You know what I mean? It does help you defend yourself. But all of those things can be continuously elevated, and if you're by yourself as a solitary nomadic invocation of a human being, you've got a lot of time and a lot of brain power that was developed to have these intense social things that you can concentrate into a simple device like a stick. So yeah, you might come back and be like, well, this stick was my weapon and this was my lightning rod to the ground, and that is part of the dance of being alone like that. And so when you come back, you will have a different air, because most people won't do it. Like, most human beings will not go and do this. That's okay. But we need to, and I think even the ideas in the books, so we talk about the Bible, it's like these figures, they were important for that time, but the archetype of a person leaving, getting knowledge, and then coming back, that should be a constant interaction that we are having. And the problem is that it is becoming harder and harder and harder, because we are destroying our environments. We are destroying these wilderness areas. We are destroying the avenues to which that is acceptable behavior. You can't really do it anymore. If I sit here and go, I'm going to wander off with a stick, I have to, it's a very concentrated thing to be like, that's acceptable. Where people aren't going, oh my God, he's trying to kill himself, or he's crazy, or I don't want some crazy guy with a stick wandering around the bottom of my paddock near my sheep. All of these things are creating also, a lot of it now isn't that. It might be the person who locks themselves in the room and creates music for 2 years. When there is a stimulus of society going way off track, certain individuals within those societies will be triggered by that, will find a place where they can observe what's going on and have a disconnected relationship with that thing, because they've got the pressure and the trigger to remove, and they disconnect but still observe, and then have an interaction directly with source. So you can call that Mother Nature, or you can call that God, or you can call that Gaia, or you can call that the rainbow serpent, whatever you want to call it. Then they glean the answers of how to steer the herd back. This isn't a superior thing. They are part of it. They've left to invoke this in themselves, to come back and help, not to come back and attack. And so when I say herd, that's why they have the stick. It's like, it's not to directly whip them and herd them and control them. It's to direct them. And that is a constantly changing environment. And this is what we see. This is what religion is. This is the consistent stories. All those figures are the same. Moses, same. Jesus, the same. Noah, the same. Abraham, the same. Muhammad, the same. The Buddha, the same. All of them. People go off, invoke this thing, direct communion with source, God, Gaia, whatever you call it, then come back and try and shift things. And the fact that we write it down in this current age has given us a concentrated importance placed on these direct stories, instead of gleaning the overall, like, that could be, the Bible could be an anthropologist's account of historic patterns within primate civilized societies. That's what we're missing. when you break down, it's like you could look at a thing of chimps and like, well, the silverback gets territorial and does this and goes off here and rah 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 rah. That's okay. We're looking at that time period. It's like the Bible gives us an insight into the last 2,000, well, actually more than that, however many thousand years of human history. And if you look at it, you go, it seems like there is a pattern of the human beings going into turmoil, and then an individual going off, coming back with a stick and fucking leading everyone to something, and then we've got like a sawtooth pattern of that happening. Like, we live in the Christian era, I think. I think, like, Christianity isn't a religion. We live in the Christian era. The same as in England and Europe, we talk about the Elizabethan era, the Victorian era. We talk about the monarch as a period. I think it's the same. It's like the Christian period is the period in which Christ was think like that sawtooth. And you can imagine, it's like, does anyone ever think, it's like, did they call the period after Noah, was that the Noah period? You know what I mean? And then was it the Abraham period? Was there the Moses period? And that's why, like, say the Jews, they're like, they just didn't cotton on to the Jesus. Do you get what this? And this is where, like, the Muhammad period's still going as well. So it's not even consistent throughout the world. It's consistent throughout, like, so Muhammad, that's their guy. He's their monarch. And ours over here is Jesus Christ. So we're in the Christian period. But it's like, what we don't realize is we need to invite, and what I actually think is we need to invite that down to a smaller level so that we don't go off on these huge, epic 1,000-year journeys into the over-expression of what one particular individual could ever potentially say to the world. And I don't think, like, there should be every region, there should be a Jesus in every town for maybe 10 years. Oh, that was that guy. He fucking did this in this town, and we turned the whole fucking town around. Yeah, we called it the Gary era, and then fucking Charles from here, he had a great idea about fucking this, and it was the Charles era in this town. And they don't have to be any, like, do you get what I mean? It's like we need to invite change in and be prepared to be knocked off our balance for a bit. And not rely on these grand scale things. And this is what would, like, one, I don't think, the only way it's possible right now, because the environment is so controlled, it just exposes the fact that it's like, well, that has to be controlled. And if it's controlled, that's way worse. Because they're not, or they're going to get the thing and they're going to be like, we need to let a few of these fucking dudes through. And I don't really know what's going to happen. And this isn't a thing of me saying, oh, I'm Jesus. It's like, there's tons of fucking Jesuses. There's tons of people that are trying to make a change, and they can see it, and they've done the work. They've done the required thing. It's just society. It's like, you can cage your society in. You can civilize, and actually not even civilize, domesticate your society. You will do it, but I'm telling you, you will do it at your own risk. Because you will domesticate yourselves into just destruction. And that's my job. That's my God-given natural expression of my humanity. And if it kills me, it kills me. I don't want to die. But if you all want to protect your domesticated herd so much that you're a member of, you've domesticated yourself, that you want to kill me to destroy it, to protect it, then do it. And the problem is, it's getting harder and harder to find somewhere to go. And this is, so this is like an end game. So it's like, because it just, the world is so small now that we are coming to a point of end game. This is a point that has to be, like, it's going to go one way or the other. Either there's going to be a letting go and a going, hey, we didn't know what we were doing, we got into trouble, or there's going to be let's forge on, make 100% domesticated civilization and destroy everything else that is competing with it. And so I hang on for another day. I'll leave it there. That's an hour, and thank you for listening.